You're listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. Today, we're here with Jake Dunlap. Jake is CEO of Skaled, which is a consultancy that helps companies grow by optimizing sales processes, people, technologies, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Welcome to the show, Jake. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So why don't we start? I always like to kind of start these episodes by hearing kind of your story, like how did you start Skaled? What were you doing before Skaled? Give us a sense of how you got to where you are today and what were some of the challenges and experiences that you went through to get there.
Yeah, I think I've got a fairly different or unique, we'll call it like entrepreneur experience. I grew up in the Midwest, between being born in the age of 7, I lived, in feedlots and on a farm. So, I think moved to Kansas City, when I was 7, had a really kind of unique opportunity then to kind of grow up in more of like an urban city environment, and then went to college in Missouri and then moved to Florida to actually work in professional sports. So, I had I think a pretty unique entrepreneur experience, extremely hardworking parents, working at the job 9 to 5, getting the pension is what's most important. And so I think, growing up, the thing that I learned the most was just the importance of hard work. And that, with a ton of hard work that you could do, that you could be successful. And they ended up being, successful. And for me, sales in particular, in college, I held a few different jobs. I did a bunch of telemarketing, waited tables, and didn't plan on sales being the career, at least in college, because look, there is no, now there are sales majors, but, for me, I wanted to work in sports, right? I knew it. I loved baseball, football. And so I was super, super fortunate my 5.5 years in college. I was able to get an interview with a Major League Baseball team, the Tampa Bay Rays. They flew me out during kind of the finals week, ended up getting a job with them, moved to Tampa. Candidly, that was like my first experience of like working with anybody outside of the Midwest. And it was super, well, and it was a lot of people from the South. And you always just think the Midwest and the South are the same. They're really not. Yeah. And so that was a really amazing experience. Then moved to Phoenix with a different sports team. And, what I realized when I was in Phoenix is that I love sports, I love sales. The two together weren't my jam, and had an amazing opportunity to, when Career Builder was really going through their kind of big lift and passing monster, they opened a big office in Phoenix. And I was just lucky enough to kind of get in the ground floor. And that was really, 2006 was my first exposure to kind of like this technology world. And I was like, oh yeah, like this is my thing. Like, I like this. And then moved out to San Francisco with Career Builder and had led a very, very successful team in Phoenix, the number 1 team out of 25 inside teams, had to get enterprise sales experience. I realized really early in my career that in sales, if you can't walk the walk, if people don't know that you can close intel, I can't, at 29, I can't ask a 45-year-old grown-ass man to, go out and try to close intel. So I realized I had to get that field experience. During that time, Career Builder also paid for my MBA, which was also really critical, helped me to get kind of a larger purview of what things look like outside of sales. Because when you're in the sales world, you are so focused on revenue, grow, top line. Went to San Francisco, really right place, right time. Was at Career Builder for 4 years. Glassdoor reached out. We are trying to scale our sales team for the first time. Mm-hmm. You've been in this space. You've led teams. You understand how business works. What do you think? And I said, yeah, let's do it. So I was sales hire number 1, first sales leader, first vice president of sales at Glassdoor. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago was a very good day with the exit. But that really kind of got me. I didn't even really know what the startup world was. Yeah. But what I realized after my Glassdoor experience, then I moved out to New York to take over as the head of sales at a company here called Chartbeat. But what I realized from those two experiences is, one, I was an entrepreneur. I didn't realize it. Meaning, like, as I look through all my experiences in sports, the teams are always small. I was a founding member. When I went to Career Builder, the team was small. I was a founding member. Glassdoor, founding member. Chartbeat, first. I had always kind of been this person. And then what I started to realize about myself is, like, I'm just not a very good employee. Like, I'm good at the job.
Yeah.
Like, I've got, I have sharp elbows. And I think that was kind of a theme throughout my career when I was an employee, is that I was successful always in crushing numbers, et cetera. But working in a certain environment, just even if it was a small business environment, I wasn't where I was strongest. And so for me, realized like, look, the only option I have is to be a CEO. It's so clear. And trust me, over the last 5 years, there's been plenty of temptations, to want to go in-house to like the next greatest thing. But where I'm at today now is I've kind of started to make that transition from, VP of sales brain to CEO brain. And so, really it's given me a really unique perspective on entrepreneurship and on being a CEO. It's obviously a good skill to have, but you also tend to overemphasize revenue and growth over everything. And I think it's just been for me as a CEO, just the last couple of years where I've started to really understand and I think appreciate other parts of the business. So I've had to, again, I think my path to this point was never predetermined. Again, my parents weren't entrepreneurs. They were just hardworking people. But, kind of fast forward to today, it was like I was kind of always on this path. And so, now, we're from a revenue standpoint, we've already passed our 2017 number. We should hit our 2018 goal by July. So, and I think part of that is just me becoming a better CEO and operator, and kind of moving from just being, a sales-based consultancy to being, more of a growth-focused organization. So that's the how I got to this current point in time.
Yeah. And a couple of interesting things there. First, I think I'm from Minnesota. I think there's this whole kind of Midwest work ethic that I think is really important. I think the kind of working hard, certainly for an early stage company, I'm sure a lot of listeners here that are kind of in the early throes of a business, getting it off the ground, building it, just putting in the time and putting in the effort sometimes is the best thing to do. It's not always clear exactly what the outcome is going to be or what the next step is, but just keep moving forward is often a thing that we focus on in early stage. I'm curious about the sports piece. Is there anything that you learned about sports, either, technically, tactically, or from a culture point of view that you feel sort of fed into the sales growth culture that you have now?
Yeah, well, I mean, sports is interesting, right? Because anytime you say you worked in professional sports, people are, oh, wow, my gosh, that's so cool. Like, wow, you worked in professional sports, which is, they know that too, right? They know that. They're very, the VPs.
I didn't know. In the compensation level.
Look, it's funny. I didn't know any better. I mean, I didn't even really know what roles existed in sports. When I remember in my interview, I'll never forget this. They were like, Jake, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be general manager.
Ooh.
It's like, I'm like, what? Like, no, I wasn't qualified at all. I didn't understand even what that meant. I just knew that that was like the pinnacle.
Where's the top of the pyramid?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've seen in sports, and I actually had a call. What was it, Friday, with the head of sales at the New York Red Bulls here in town, and we've talked to and met with lots of sports leaders, as a part of Skaled now. Mm-hmm. I think sports is an entertainment business. Yeah. Sports is not secondary, but it's certainly not the value proposition. So I think what my experience in sports gave me was a really strong foundation, and is how to take something that appears like a platform or something that's really, really tactical, and how to instead really speak to the business value that a company would derive. Yeah. I worked for the Tampa Bay Rays between 2003 and 2005, the worst team in baseball. I worked for the Phoenix Coyotes in 2004, 2005, 2006. One of the worst teams in hockey. Whenever you have those variables, you have to learn really quickly what's the value that I can deliver. And the value is awesome experience, client retention. Yeah. And so hockey is just merely a vehicle that's going to help you to grow your business and going to help you to retain your customers. And so I think working in that environment early on helped me from a sales career standpoint to really quickly understand how to get to the value, as opposed to explaining the utility of what something was, because nobody was buying that. I mean, I remember a Tuesday day game in Tampa versus Minnesota. I think we had like 2,500 people, right? Like nobody was buying the product on the field. They're buying the experience. Yeah. And I think that experience in sports really helped me to hone that. And I took that with me, into my tech sales and SaaS career as well too.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. Just kind of the whole idea of understanding, what is the value that people are getting out of the product or service, rather than what is the actual tangible thing that you're doing is an important
It's point. Always that, right? I mean, that's like, people have been talking that for a long time, but I think a lot of people don't get it. I think a lot of people, and founders and CEOs too, my God, like it's the same thing, right? It's like, I'm going to talk to you about the utility of what it is versus the impact that this is going to have, on your business.
Well, I think it's because a lot of entrepreneurs are they're problem solvers, they're puzzle solvers. Like they want to find a solution, and they get very enamored with the solution, the thing that they've created as an object.
Worse.
and getting out of that, hey, look, I need to think beyond this thing and think about, okay, what are my customers? What are their problems? How am I solving it? What is the value they're going to get? And beyond just the utilitarian value, but what is the emotional value that they're going to get out of this, out of my product or service?
Yeah, exactly.
Good points. So tell me a little bit more about Skaled, what you've been doing the last couple of years. Where are you focused? What kind of companies are you working with? Just give us a sense of the type of work that you're doing now.
Yeah, it's evolved, and I think, you talked about this a little bit, Bruce, like, you kind of start in the early days. I think a big mistake that I made as an entrepreneur is I didn't do a good enough job. I used to think like mission, vision, and that stuff was like kind of important. And I think what I've really realized over the last 2 years is it is the most important thing, that without a clear vision, a clear mission, it's really easy, especially as a professional services company, to get sucked into a lot of things. Yeah. And so if you kind of fast forward to where we are today, and I'd really say over the last 2 years, I think we're getting really, really good at this, of really knowing who we are, right? Of moving away from the sales training world, right? I think it's really easy to loop in growth consulting with, a one-day training, moving away from that. Why have we moved away from that? Like, we want to show impact, right? The work that we want to do with our clients, we want it to last. We want people to see results. Yeah. And if you look at the stats about the impact of, a sales training, it's like 85% of it's forgotten in the first 45 days, right? There's a lot of stats that just show that's not how we actually learn, is these like really intense, like 8-hour sessions. Like, instead, there's like a reinforcement period. So I think what's happened is we've really started to focus. And I think the other, if you look at where we're at today and the types of companies we're working with, is the bleed between what is marketing and what is sales is becoming super apparent. And over the next 5 years, it's going to be almost indistinguishable, meaning what it means to be in marketing and nurturing and driving intent is going to be a lot of the things that we traditionally associate with sales, meaning marketing's role and like this role of intent is going to be driven by machines, other platforms, et cetera. So what it means to be in the role of sales is evolving at a unprecedented pace. And I think 5 years from now, just what it means to be in sales is just going to be dramatically different. And so the types of companies that we're working with is, look, we have clients that are Series A, organizations that are kind of going through that first phase of operationalization, and they're looking for someone who gets it, someone who understands the intersection of how do you scale a team smart, how do you scale a team with sales technologies. We've implemented hundreds of sales technologies, which I think completely separates us from other, consulting firms, up to really big, public and private companies. So, LinkedIn talked about this publicly on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, which is great. LinkedIn's a current customer of ours. We have a handful of other clients like that again are trying to bring new ideas to the table. And so I think, our customer base, more typically is like that company that is going through a different challenge around operationalization. So it's either that first stage or it's much later on where a part of the machine needs to be tweaked, and you're looking to not throw training at it, throw more bodies at it. You're really looking for a partner that brings strong operational and tactical knowledge, plus, we'll call it strategic, go-to-market vision. And I think that's really what separates us in this market is, our consultants are all ex-sales leaders, right? So this isn't, people from a more traditional background. We tried it, it just didn't work. And so I think it's more about the problems that a company is looking to solve. And I think because we've, worked with over 250, 300 plus, kind of growth technology from like that Series A to Series F level, we have a really unique perspective to bring to corporates as well. But, look, again, like our client base right now is probably 30 to 40%, that like Series A to Series C, another 30 to 40%, maybe 200 to 500 employees. And then, only 10 or 15% is that large corporate.
So, and let's talk a little bit more about that marketing sales relationship, because I think that's something that I see coming up again and again in, as companies sort of think more strategically and start doing some planning and start even figuring out organizational structure, they struggle with. And I think part of it is that as you mentioned, if you look at maybe a traditional or a historic view of sales and marketing, they're quite separate. Marketing, being much more about demand generation and sales being much more about, closing deals. Talk to me a little bit about what that was and then what you've seen changing over time and maybe what are the forces that you see playing into that?
Well, the big force is over the last 2.5, maybe 3 years, for the first time, platforms are being built for salespeople that aren't CRMs and maybe some version of reporting. If you look at, VentureBeat, Bowery Capital, they all put out this kind of sales technology landscape. It looks identical to what marketing technology went through starting back in 2008. And so the reason that this is happening is, again, sales has always been grit. It's like, I'm going to grind. And not only that, and we, again, there's a difference between hard work and smart work. I think what I've done throughout my career is, I have a hard work ethic, but I'm also clever. Not to digress too much, but I will tell this story about, again, the importance of smart work. When I was at Tampa, my very first job, after the first year of ticket sales, I went and analyzed every single inbound sale I had, because the way the phone system works is there's 12 of us, is it worked on a loop and it was a round robin. So if someone else picked up the phone, it would skip them and go to the next person. So what I did is I mapped out every inbound sale that came in, hundreds and hundreds of inbound sales. And what I saw were these really weird gaps where nobody called in. And so that's when I made all my cold calls. So I would literally sit there and do absolutely nothing. And then what I would do, I would crush the cold calls. And then I would just sit there, Tampa Bay Rays, Tampa Bay Rays, Tampa. And I would because everyone else would keep making calls. I'm like, why are you making calls? The data says nobody, it just goes back to it, always trying to work smart along with working hard.
So you were actually mapping the kind of the demand. You're looking at the demand curve. And saying, hey, look, I should optimize myself to be responsive during high inbound call periods, and during these low periods, that's when I should do my outbound calls.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
it's strategic.
It just goes back to there are opportunities to be. I think that the key thing that the point there is just more about being resourceful. I've always been extremely resourceful. Again, it's cost me as being an employee. I really don't understand where lines are or where barriers are. I'm always just well, why is that? Doesn't make sense. I'm just going to do this other thing, and that will allow me to crush it and go, do better. So going back to your question, why? But again, that's kind of sales technology, right? Trying to analyze, that was 2005's version of predictive analytics, right? There's just ghetto Excel skills. But what's happening is we have all this sales technology. So gosh, if I would have had these tools SalesLoft and other tools, it would have been amazing. But let me tell you, some of the work that we're doing, and I'll tell you why I know that this is true. You have a marketing automation tool that's responsible for doing all these things interacting with customers. We kind of typically look at marketing automation as an email tool that's nurturing people top of funnel with content. It's not really true anymore. People are using it in the middle funnel to make sure you hit people with the right content, using that with current customers. Now you couple that with a sales engagement platform, which allows me to start to personalize things, which allows me to then say, okay, Susan has done X, Y, Z, or this is my perfect ICP. I'm going to do, kind of efficient personalized outreach. When you marry those two, when you marry the ability to do more and more intent-based work across email, across phone, with the ability to quickly utilize Salesforce to trigger personalized events once people have reached a level of intent, there is no doubt that is going to be the future. That the future is going to be, we are following up more and more on intent, and that grit factor is more about, again, kind of more and more migrating to working smart. I think you're going to see smarter and smarter and smarter salespeople. I think you're going to see the stigma go away of lax bros as a sales persona. I think you're going to see more and more project management, smart sales types to get this kind of workflow management. So I think what this means for a lot of companies and CEOs and by the way, for CROs, and enterprise sales leaders in particular, if you're not paying attention to what's happening in sales technology, you're just at a massive deficit. You're just going to continue to throw bodies at it while your peers are, again, being more efficient and more effective. So I think what you're seeing is this bleed between what marketing is responsible for and what sales is responsible for. And I would argue that sales is becoming more and more responsible for intent follow-up, and marketing's job is to drive to certain levels of intent at different parts. Right. Marketing should help current customers use the product more efficiently, whether that's marketing or product marketing. We can debate that later. But, I think that there's just such a bleed now where it's all going to bleed into, candidly more and more marketing than sales, I think, as sales gets shrunk in this process. But I think too many companies, and why I think this is really applicable to this audience, Bruce, is that too many companies focus on outbound first. They're if I can just throw spears, if I can just go out, I can find people. Not that I don't think all companies should be doing outbound. It is critical, but they also should be building their content, their social, getting both mid funnel and top of funnel social to get people more active, talking about it and then hitting those people with the right content. So again, I think that's going to continue to prevail. HubSpot kind of had that foresight, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago about this whole concept of inbound marketing. And I think the rest of the world is just now, starting that focus. So
if I was a founder, CEO, entrepreneur of early stage, say sub $10 million services company, where do you see, or where would you guess are the things they're probably not doing super well right now? And what are some of the things you'd suggest they start looking at in terms of really looking at scaling that business? I mean, typically the challenges that I see are the sales process, the sales work is done by, some kind of senior person, some kind of partner level thing. Like what are some of the things that you would suggest they start looking at to create a system, a process that's going to be able to take them to that $100 million level?
You got to be on the grind. I think the problem is I see so many especially early, professional services, early stage tech companies. They're looking to outsource sales as soon as possible to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the people that win, man, the people that win are the sales leaders and partners that we see that go and do the grind. They're like, yeah, of course I need to build out the process first, or I need to have a partner with me at that level. Sales is not, for whatever reason, you would never just hire, I use this analogy all the time. You would never hire a computer programmer, right? And say, oh yeah, you know how to write code. Cool. Like we use C++, like go at it. But yet that's how we hire salespeople. We don't give them a playbook. We don't give them the way that we operate or the way that we do business. It's asinine. And I think that's why so many entrepreneurs fail. They want to outsource sales, like the same way that you can't really outsource product development. So like you as the founder have to be at it. I'll tell a story about Vettery. Vettery to me is a perfect example of this. One of the founders, a guy named Brett. Brett was trying to figure out, this is last year, right? Vettery just sold for $100 million to Adecco, right? Mm-hmm. Brett realized outbound wasn't working for whatever reason. You know what he did? He stopped being CEO and he started being an SDR for a month and started winning and crushing. And literally less than a year later, his company sold for $100 million. They destroyed outbound. They did an amazing job. Why? He realized that for his business, at the most important thing that he could be doing, and this isn't the case for every founder. Yeah. It could be that you need a partner who's going to be able to do this, but he did it. He's like, no, this isn't going to fail. No. Like, I'm not going to let this thing, like, I know it can work. I'm going to go do it. And so I think too many CEOs either don't have a partner who will actually go grind it out with them, or are too scared to go and fail and grind it out and figure it out. And there is no shortcut. Someone has to build a playbook for your sales organization, and 9 times out of 10, it needs to be you as the CEO or somebody like you, right? Or someone who's into your business. And I think that's especially when you talk to seed, early Series A, I think that's probably the most, like, one of the biggest red flags for us. Like don't outsource sales, don't outsource building your complete sales program to us, because we're going to be filling it out as well too. Mm-hmm. You need to get on the grind. We'll help you to operationalize it. And then so you can scale and grow, but you need to go figure out some of the basics and get those first 10, 15 customers.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I always kind of have this model that I use with CEOs who are kind of in that growth process where we say, you always start very product focused. You're focused on developing some kind of product or service that's solving some kind of problem. And then the problem is you need to focus on that customer acquisition. What is that process? What is the system? What is the channel? How do you make that not only scalable? How do you make that financially viable? How much does it cost to attract a customer? How much money are you going to make off them? And you have to make that work. And then you shift to being corporate or culturally focused, right? So it's build the product, build the channel, build the culture is kind of this phase that I see companies go through. And I think you're hitting it on the head, which is those CEOs who can't successfully make that transition from being very product focused to being customer acquisition and sales channel focused, they're going to hit a plateau. They're never going to get above a certain height.
Yeah, and I would say, I think you had to build a culture while you're doing both. Meaning, I would say culture needs to be a part of those first two phases, and your company's culture will evolve, right, as you move from these different phases. And I think, it's either you know how to do it or you partnered with the right person who does. It's totally, if you can't spit out a sentence, then then you need a partner for your business, and you need to also understand the value that they bring to the business. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you can't go out and make those first few sales, then or do that, then you need to realize that you need a partner. Yeah. And that's totally fine. And I think, this is not a new concept, right? Steve Blank wrote about this in 4 Steps to Epiphany. That book, it's a textbook. It's long. Eric Ries has obviously picked it up. These concepts are 15, I don't know how old the course that is.
It's almost 20 years. I think it's almost 20,
20, yeah. It's the same process. Just go do it. There's a reason there's millions of entrepreneurs doing it. That's the other thing. I think I've made my career just absorbing best practices of other people and just doing it. I know who I am. I'm authentic to myself, but I have zero pride about just doing what other people have done. That's the other thing CEOs and entrepreneurs, especially first-time CEOs, Bruce, I see this all the time. Yeah. First-time CEOs have this chip on their shoulder. I have to do it all myself. If you look at it, a disproportionate amount of our clients are either, a little bit later on in their career or second time entrepreneurs, because then they realize there's no reward, there's no prize for doing it all yourself and grinding it out for 2 extra years to get to the same place that another company got to in 6 months because they just asked for help.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of first-time CEOs in particular, there's so much ego and so much pride that they can't get over themselves to just say, whereas me, I'm my entire life, I'm just going to do what other people have already done that's been successful, put my own weird twist on it and just do that. Most things have already been done before. There's not a lot of original thought yet left with, 8-9 billion people on the planet. So I think, that would probably be the other thing we haven't talked about is just get out of your own way and seek help. I don't care if you work with us. I don't care who you work with. But you need to get people who are experts. And that's even for my own business, right? That's taken me a long time. I kept hiring marketing is a perfect example. Kept hiring 1 or 2 people in marketing that were these weird jacks of all trades. Yeah. Never again. I'm hire specialists. Great. Yeah. You're amazing at content. You're doing content. You're amazing at social. You're doing social. And maybe it means I only need them 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week. So I think that concept of knowing what I'm not good at and knowing what the business isn't good at and hiring specialists versus jacks of all trades is also really, really critical, as you grow. So that would probably be
I think that's a key one. I mean, we talk about this. You want to become the dumbest person in the room, right? You want to make sure that you're hiring people that are really smart and really expert in these areas and focus on the coordination and the long-term planning and the sort of strategy behind things. Yeah, like you said, there's no prize for trying to do it yourself. It's just whoever can get to the final outcomes the fastest.
You can win. That's the prize. How can you get there as fast as humanly possible? And I think it's all ego, man. I see it.
Yeah, there's a whole nother episode we can do on that. But I think you're absolutely right. It's a big gating factor,
and it kills you. It cripples your ability to grow. When you're focused on just trying to do it all yourself. And again, then you just kind of look up and you realize why have I been doing this? There's no self-inflicted punishment.
Exactly. This has been great. Great conversations and great points. I think there's probably a lot more we could talk about. We can schedule another episode to get into some of those. In the meantime, if people want to get a hold of you, learn more about Skaled, learn more about the work you've done, what's the best place to get a hold of you and way to find out more about the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, if you want to keep up on the day-to-day, LinkedIn is best. I'm posting every day, posting about the work that we're doing with our clients. Our clients are posting about the work that we're doing. So I think if you want to get a really good sense for who we are as a company, obviously the website, Skaled with a K, SKALED.com. But I think if you check out what I'm doing on LinkedIn, what we're doing on LinkedIn, I think you'll get a really good sense for the type of organization that we are, the type of projects that we work on. Twitter is another one, @JakeT.Dunlap is probably the second best way. And then look, DM me on LinkedIn. That's the number one way. I'm living on LinkedIn, working with people. I'm having at any given time 15, 20 plus direct message conversations just with people who've hit me up like, Jake, this is a challenge we're going through. I'm always down to help, and provide, any insights that I can. So I'd say LinkedIn, the website, Twitter, but LinkedIn probably first.
Perfect. And I'll make sure for listeners that all those links are in the show notes so they can get all of you. Jake, this is a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.